Hi there. If this is your first time here, my name is Gift Egrinu, and in this video, I'm going to be walking you through how to build an accessible onboarding app with Chakra UI Vue. So, what is Chakra UI Vue? Chakra UI Vue is a Vue UI library that helps you build accessible components and gives you the building blocks to build your Vue applications with speed. This UI library, it's very recommended. I would be walking you through like how to use it, how to go on to install it and use it in your Vue application. Before we move on, I'll show you how quickly you can get set up with using this library. And the most important feature that I feel that most people should know about Chakra is that it comes bundled with accessible components, which is not a norm with UI libraries. Chakra UI follows strictly the accessibility standards. So all the components comes with proper attributes and keyboard interactions out of the box. It's also teamable, meaning that you can customize it to fit your application needs. You can customize any of the components, and it's also composable, meaning that the components were built with composition in mind. You can leverage any component to create new things. This is how you would typically use it. So it comes bundled with different components that you can just use in within your Vue application. This is an example. This is a card that has an image, a text, a badge, and a rating. All of these are components that you can just find in the documentation. So if I click on Get Started, it takes us to the documentation. You have the instructions for installing it, how you can actually theme it. This talks a bit about how they are thinking of accessibility with this library. There are several components that we will be using in this video. We won't be using everything, but we'll be using some of it. We have an example, the accordion component. I really like this because, as you can see, there for each component there is an accessibility report showing, just to show you how much they are centered on making sure that these libraries or these components are following the standards. So there is always a report for each of the components. Specifically for this video, I'll be building an onboarding app. It's just a simple landing page that helps you onboard as a new user. So I already have a mock-up, and this is what it looks like. Pardon my minimal design. But basically, we'll be building this from just mainly looking at this mock-up. You can already tell the components that you would use from the Chakra UI library. That is why it makes it easy for you to build your application. So you don't have to think of doing the development from scratch. So for instance, I would typically use the box component here, use the text component, use the progress component here, and my page is ready. So let's build out this page using Chakra UI. Starting off with a fresh Vue installation, we can use the Chakra UI as a Vue plugin. We can install it as a Vue plugin using the command vue add Chakra UI. What this does is it sets up the base configuration for Chakra UI, and we don't have to do that ourselves. So it will automatically import the package in the main.js file and do all the setup, like adding the theme provider, adding the series set, setting it up so you don't have to do it yourself. Once this installation completes, we are ready to start using Chakra UI within our Vue component. Do we need to use Vue Router for this? No, we are not using Vue Router. So as you can see, this already has, in our app.vue, already has the theme provider components imported, the series set components imported. After the installation is complete, I'm just going to go over to confirm that it was imported as expected, which I can see that it is. I'm going to go over to the app.vue to also confirm that the theme provider and the series set was also imported. Now the theme provider is always going to be wrapped around other components that we're using. So always remember to wrap your seating provider around other components, while the C reset component should always be imported, because it would help us make sure that every other component we'll be using will work correctly. So you can also check out the docs to see where this was quoted. And now that I have that, I want to just try out to make sure everything works as expected. Here I'm using the C box component, which represents a div, and we'll just go ahead and add text within it. Also, I would add the C box, import it in my script, and yeah, just to make sure it is working. Great. So now let's go ahead and build out the mockup design. In our mockup, we have two main containing components, the nav component and the main component, and this is what we'll be working with. I'll go ahead and create a new component called nav.view, and this is where we'll add all the code for the navbar. Taking a look at the mockup for a minute, we'd see that the navbar is a flex component that has three children within it: the logo, the menus, and the contact button. So we'll be using the C-Flex component for this. In the docs, we see that the flex component is also a box component, but it just has display flex attached to it by default, meaning that the flex component is also a div. It renders a div element, so we should have that in mind. I imported C-Flex within the nav component, so let's use it. We'll start by adding a C-Flex, which is like the container, and then add three more C-Flex components within it to represent the three different items we'll be adding to the navbar. The first one will be the logo, which is the first item, and then also make sure to import the text just to make sure it works as expected. Now we can see that our result is not rendering, so we'll go over to the app.view to actually import the nav components there. And also take out the C box that we added earlier, because we won't be needing that anymore. Now we'll go back to the nav component and then add another C-Flex. This would be where we would add all the menu items. So menu 1, menu 2, menu 3, and menu 4 would add them within the C-Flex, the second C-Flex. And then the last C-Flex child, the last child would contain the contact button, and this here we'll be using the C button component. If we go ahead to check what that is, we'll need to import it using C button. And use it within our template. Great. Now we need to make sure that our spacing looks exactly like the mockup that we have. So we'll go ahead to add props to each of these flex items. So we'll start by, if you check flex, we can add different props to it. We can add direction, wrap, align, justify. Here I need to use justify to center it. So I'll add space between as the property for the justify prop, which adds a bit of space between each items. And then moving on to the second flex item. Next, I'll be adding a padding right to the menu items. So giving it a padding should add a bit of space between each of the items, because right now it looks too close to each other. Let's try using 10 instead. 10 should work. 10 looks great. Now for the button, we'll see the style prop we need to add. Looking at the mockup, it has an outline instead of the background like we currently do have now. So let's go over and see how to change that. So in the button component, you can have variant, solid, outline, ghost. So I'll be using outline for mine. Variant, outline. Now that is great. Then the color, I would like to change it to gray. So variant color gray. Yeah, that looks good. We still need to do some more adjustment, but I think, yeah, gray works for now. Gray works for now. Now I would like to change the name from logo to say quiz app. What else? I would make that bold by using the font weight prop. And we can now change the color, like make it lighter by using the gray 200 instead. Gray 700 works better. Yeah, that's great. The contact button is a little bit big, so I'll use the size prop to resize it to small. Now that looks better. Now that we're done with the nav, we'll move on to the next component, which is the main. Here we have a title text, a subtitle text, a flex with 3 boxes, and flex children within it, a button, and a progress bar. Back now and add a ctext component and then comment it out so I can use it. We'll add a title here, which is question 2. And then add the style. Here we need font size because it's a very large, so I'll use 6XL. And yeah, don't forget to add it to the script, so I'm going to import it as well. Ctext and then uncomment it. Now this is great. I'm going to center it using text align center. Great. I want to make it a bit bold, so I can say font weight bold. So this is supposed to be for the subtitle. What is your level of experience? Now I'll center that, just add almost the same here. Center it and make the font smaller because it's the smaller text. So I'll maybe use I'll use XL for this. Looks great. Now we'll go ahead and do the next thing. We're done with this. We'll go ahead and do the next thing, which is the box. Just adjusting the title because I feel like it looks too big. Now I'm going to go ahead and create a C-flex now. So I would add and uncomment the C-flex component so that I can use it and it doesn't show any errors. Now using C-flex, I want a container, a flex container with 3 children. So here I have this first flex item, this second flex item, and the third flex item. So meaning I'll have 3 flex items within the containing flex box. So the first one will have an image. I am going to just add the link to the image, circle icon, always add the alt, adding the link, and then yeah, our image is there, and then add an alt name for it, say circle icon in this case, and also add a width of 100. Then the next thing would be to add the C text, which is beginner. In this case, I'm just going to use that, beginner. Great. Now I don't want it stacked side by side, so I would first of all copy this out and use flex direction column instead of row, so the text goes below it. I don't think D works because I'm not sure flex direction D is the correct shorthand for it, so I'm just going to change it back to flex direction. Yeah, this is exactly what I want. And then the text should be, say, centered, and then also it should be white for the first one, and then add font size of Excel. Looks great. So let's add a background color here. So background here would be indigo. Great. And we'll just add a little bit of margin and padding to it so it looks better. And then add a width of small, because that way the width of the item would all align. Rounded is equals to large, so this is what it looks like. I also need to center the circle so it's in the middle. I'll add a margin top to the containing flex box, say margin top and bottom actually of 12 pixels, and then justify center so it's all aligned properly. Now I can go ahead and copy out this item C-flex here into two different sections. Now we have this, which is great. We still need to center the circle, so I'm just going to go ahead and add align center to each of the flex item, so everything is just centered within it. Great. Copy that and paste to the remaining two. Looks great. Change the text. This is experienced, and the next one is professional. Now I would like to remove the background and add outline just like it is in the mockup. So where we have background indigo, I can just remove that and say border width 1 pixel. So that gives each of the flex a border of 1 pixel. I'll do the same for the other one, just copy and paste. Great. And now also need to change the text back. So instead of color white, I'll just leave it as the default, like by just removing it. So it goes back to the default color. Great, this looks great. I feel like we need to add some space between both of them, the image and the text. So I'll just add a margin top of, let's use 5 or 6, margin top of 6 to all of them. Now that looks way better. Great. Let's work on the button here. So in our components, we'll go ahead and add a C flex or a C box. Let's use a C flex, so that way we can center the button directly in the middle. Then we use a C button. Remember to add it, import it, and then uncomment it in the component section. And then now we have a button I would add justify center, so it's just directly in the middle of the div. Yeah, exactly. So I'll add the text next to the button, and then change the background color. Change the background color. Yeah, we're using indigo 200 actually. So using variant color indigo, I can just use it, but I can't use indigo 200, which is a lighter shade. So if I try using it, it won't work out. So instead of using that, I'm just going to use background color instead. It's because I think for all the variant color, they just have the main color and not the, say, indigo 200, indigo 100, or so on and so forth. I want when you hover on it, I want it to still have the other color, so I would add a variant color of indigo. I'll change this to variant color and also add a width of 250 pixels so it's wide enough. Great. And then change this to variant color. Great, that works. Finally, we'll be working on the progress component. So I'll just go ahead and import it here, see progress, and also uncomment it from the component. Now I'll be using a containing div here, which is a C box, and then I'll have the C progress within it. The reason why I'm doing this is so I can center the C progress within the page. So the C progress, I will just edit this and use this enclosing tag, and then I'll add a value of 60%. So 60 means 60%. Let's give it a height of 40 pixels. So the shorthand H doesn't work, so I'll just use height instead. Nice. I would add a bit of margin top to the div, to the box. So doing this should make it okay. Great. This just added a bit of margin to the top and bottom, and also the width, I'll change that to large. Looks great. And finally, what I would like to do is to change the color. So right now it has this default blue color, but I want it to have this color. So I'll go over and give it so it also has this cool prop which has stripe. It adds this very fancy stripe. We can also make it animated by saying it's animated and it moves. But yeah, so the color here that I want to add is indigo, but indigo here is a darker shade, but I want it to be indigo 200. If I try doing that, it won't work because there is a way that the progress component was built, meaning that you can only add a solid color, like you can only add, say, blue, red, indigo, but you can add indigo.200. So I'll be using a different way to achieve that. So I'll be using Chakra directive. The Vich Chakra directive allows you to customize your own component and extend it by adding more features to it. So instead of using the color, right, I'll just add a background color directly to the div with the V Chakra directive. So here I'm just going to specify that I want it to have a background color of indigo 200, and that way it works. See, yeah, it works. So this is exactly what I want, and I'll go back and add there is animated prop, so it has this very fancy animated style to it. Great. So the other thing I would like to do here is to add the text below the progress bar, like this that says step 2 of out of 4 and then 60%. So I'll go over and do that now. I would like to add this using the C-Flex, so I'll just make it rounded 40 pixels. Yeah, so it has a very nice border radius to it. Going over, I would create a C-Flex and add 2 texts within it so they're aligned side by side. C text with step 2 out of say 5, and the next one would be 60%. Now I can add a justify space between to this, but before that I want the text to be a little bit lighter, so I'm going to use gray. Maybe no, gray 200 is too light. Gray 500. Font size of, let's use extra small. That is quite small. Change it to small. Small should work. Great. And I'll make this 500 again, so it's a little bit visible. Or 700. 700 works. Yeah. And then I'll add justify space between to it, so it gives it a little bit of spacing. Great. And then I'll add a margin top and bottom, and also margin left and right, so I'm using MY and MX shorthand. Looks good. So this is exactly what our mockup looks like going by the design, and this is our entire quiz app or onboarding app built with Chakra UI Vue. I really like the experience so far of building this, and it just goes to show that you can quickly build out your application with the library. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope it was a great introduction to using Chakra UI Vue. Let me know in the comment section if you have any questions, and I'll also leave the links to the project and also the link to the Chakra UI documentation. Thank you, and see you in my next video.